Imagine a place where healing begins. Welcome to Hidden Oaks, our serene 46-acre off-the-grid ranch, dedicated to guiding you on your path to recovery from addiction and past traumas. Here, surrounded by the tranquility of nature, we offer a safe space for renewal and growth. At Hidden Oaks, we understand that the journey to recovery can be challenging. That's why our compassionate team is here to support you every step of the way, providing personalized treatment programs tailored to your unique needs. Take the first step towards reclaiming your life today. Call us at 972-932-2033 or visit our website at resolutionshealthcare.com to learn more. Remember, the path to recovery runs through Hidden Oaks. Let us help you find your way. Yeah, and I know you and I were touching on it, but what got you into just kind of walking with dudes in their life and pulling them into just kind of a more faith-filled and more action kind of life? I know that's a big question, but...
What pulled me into it?
Yeah.
Being surrounded by men in federal prison.
All right.
For me, my story and my journey, it goes all the way back to my adolescence. I struggled with things at home, and I did not know how to process them, so it made me absolutely unstable, and it continued all the way up into my 20s. And I have a unique experience. I was on both sides of the drug game. I was an addict for about 2.5, 3 years, and then I was also a drug dealer. I was selling to the people that sold drugs, right? So that ended up with a 9-year incarceration bid in federal prison for me. And it was there that I really began to realize I was wasting my life. I was not living up to my purpose. I was not living up to the man that God called me to be, and I had to make a decision. And upon surrendering my life, God started speaking to me and giving me purpose. And from there, I started speaking to other individuals and pumping life into them and giving them purpose. And it has not stopped. So behind prison bars, I was able to impact men that were hopeless.
Yeah.
You
have a very faith-filled message that I appreciate. When I was watching your videos, I was like, okay, I'm looking forward to sitting down with this guy, right? And I see that just kind of as I'm getting to know you and chatting, that I imagine a lot of guys. I was talking with a client about it today. I said, is it any wonder that when all of the natural physical freedoms are taken away, that a lot of these individuals find their higher power? Mm-hmm. They find God, Mm-hmm. What would you say about that?
I wish all of them would, but the reality is a majority of them don't. Because even behind the fence, there are still things that you can do. Unfortunately, there's still drugs there, so you see a lot of guys that are still relying upon an external source to give them peace or give them stability and kind of regulate their thoughts and their emotions, right? And that's a sad state. But for those that are blessed enough to have that opportunity to be set down and kind of have everything ripped away and to, begin to ask some deep questions, but then seek the answer for them, that right there is a powerful thing. And a man that knows who he is and a man that has a purpose is a force to be reckoned with.
Absolutely.
So it's a beautiful thing.
What do you think it is like? Because you walk with men, like that click when a dude is willing to look at themselves, like pull themselves out of that hopelessness. Like you've done it, right? So we're in good company in this room. What do you think that is that happens for us? Ooh. Like where it's just like we wake up one day. I don't know if it was like something hit me upside the head, but like, just even listening to you, I'm like, I recognize it. I hear it in you. And I'm curious if you would put some words to that, just kind of what it was like for you.
What it was like for me?
Uh-huh.
Okay. So what it was like for me. Well, as you know, my message is faith-based because my life centers around my faith. So for me, God was dealing with me. And he was, through his word, showing me Abraham, and he was showing me who he was, and he was showing me what faith was. And even though Abraham was messed up, he had all kinds of flaws, right? He still has a good witness. He's a friend of God, right? Used by God. So I had to really answer the question that God asked me, what are you going to do? And I think that's what it comes down to. What are you going to do? At the end of the day, everybody has thoughts that are going through their mind. Thousands, right? Yeah. But there are certain thoughts that always come back and that we cannot escape. And it is not until we address those that we really begin to break the cycle, if you will. And for me, that was my moment of breaking the cycle, because I was 30 years old and I was about to be sentenced to a lot of time in federal prison. And I'm like, my life is over. And what am I going to do? It's like I could continue and do this time like I've been doing it with the same mentality and doing things my way, or I can turn it over to God. I even said this. I said, God, I've messed this life up. If there's still something that you want out of this life, it's yours.
Yeah.
That's my faith-based experience and moment, if you will. But I think that there's a thread that kind of connects every man of when you get to that moment and that realization of not only what am I going to do, but who am I going to be?
Yeah. Yeah.
Did I answer your question? Did I go everywhere? But
No, that was perfect. You touch on something I think really important too, of like when we find ourselves down in that point of what am I going to do, there's this connection moment, at least like when I realized it for myself, of like, I can't blame anybody anymore for, I'm the one who keeps getting arrested. I'm the one who keeps breaking the law. Right. Yeah. And there was this moment of like, it doesn't matter anymore that the buck's been passed to me. What matters is, am I going to wake up and take the buck or not?
Right.
Right. And, man, when, like you were saying, like, and I'm sure you've seen this walking with dudes, it's like when they do, you hit the nail on the head when you said it earlier. They are a force to be reckoned with.
A force to be reckoned with. And we're probably about to be everywhere. I hope you don't have a certain script that you.
No, we're good. We go wherever you want.
But that brings me to something that I realized, right? Talking about grabbing that buck, right? Mm-hmm. So the cards that we've been dealt, not everybody has the same hand, right? And in prison, there are a lot of people that have started life behind the queue. And they did have less opportunity, and they were less fortunate, right? All that said, still, what are you going to do? Yeah. Who are you going to become? So whenever we stop shifting the blame and we take responsibility and we look at what can I do or how can I respond, right? That's when we can really have a breakthrough. And that's what I got to see, and that is what encouraged me a lot of the times when men were in that state and forget the excuses, forget what I've done, forget what didn't happen and should have happened. This is what I am, or this is where I am. What am I going to do about it? Yeah. So yes, very powerful, very powerful moment in a man's life.
It's fun and funny too, right? Like working with men, because there comes this moment with the responsibility and accountability piece of like men react to it. Some react by running away from it. Some react with force, right? But the response that I think we all find when we allow ourselves to settle is to assume it, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm curious, just kind of as you've ventured into this and it was put on your heart to work with men, just kind of what you've seen when men's backs are against the wall. And maybe I guess what I'm kind of asking for too is like, do you have any funny stories of working with dudes and watching them kind of fall into that responsibility? You know what I'm saying? Like they kind of trip into it sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. Some funny stories, nothing comes off the top of my head, but it's okay. So I got to see men struggle with it and I guess try to squirm out of it and try to put the blame on the woman or put the blame on the parents or put the blame on the government, right? What are you going to do?
Yeah.
How are you going to respond, right? And especially in that setting, there are a lot of times that we would laugh, right, and just have some good moments. But whenever we were on that one-on-one, or even in the group, no, no playing about that.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like the time is now.
Yeah.
So let's get to it.
Yeah, you know, I think the message consistently across the board with that, the way you're talking about, that I hear is like, no matter what the case is, when you're venturing into blame, right, the answer always is you were there. You put yourself in this. And so like when I'm working with dudes too, a lot of times 12-steppers in recovery, it's like you could blame your wife, you could blame your girlfriend, you could blame your mom, you could blame your dad, but you did this. All right? With all the love and grace in the world, you made the choice. It's not like we're 15, 14, 13 years old anymore. We're grown men.
Right.
All right. No one made you do this. Yeah.
And see, even that, right? 13, 14, 15, it's hard. But the reality is they have to make better decisions now, because if not, they're going to find themselves being 25, 30, still making little boy decisions. And that's a tough pill to swallow sometimes, but it still has to be swallowed.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, they're the ones that are going to have to live that life. And that's part of the message of hope. And that's part of the teaching and the coaching that I come with. Because if you don't take responsibility for your life, you better believe the government will, the streets will, society will, Instagram will, and you will forever, I don't want to say forever, because it's definitely dramatic, but you will forever, no, but you will definitely live a life of hollowness, not having the fulfillment of your identity and just being able to be at peace with who you truly are.
Yeah. Yeah. Identity is a big one.
Identity extremely.
That, you know, when you're touching on that, it's no wonder, right? As you let it right into identity, it's like when you were, the streets will give you that. The government will tell you that. Social media will tell you. It's like if you don't stand for something, you'll get swept away by everything.
Absolutely. And there's a lot to be swept away by.
These days, it's just turn on the TV, man.
I'm telling you, look, I could not imagine growing up with social media.
Yeah.
In my day, right? Yeah. Me and my friends, we were already bad, but we would have been extremely toxic. I'm talking about terrible. Because it's just too much access and there are too many messages. And what happens is it's an overload. And a lot of young people take a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit, and there's nothing left of them.
Yeah.
I want to bring them.
Right. Are you working with that age group often? Like that grew up with social media always being a thing. So kind of what would that be, like Generation Z or something? I'm not even sure.
I don't even know the name of the generations, but it's one of them generations.
Yeah, yeah. But do you work with like a lot of those kind of young men? Yeah, they're facing some unique challenges these days.
And all right, so you have adults, right, that are going to therapy, spending thousands of dollars, right? Which they should, because therapy is absolutely important.
I appreciate you saying that.
For mental health, and just to be able to process some of the trauma that has went on in their lives. But it's the same trauma that the 13-year-old faces. It's the same trauma that the 14-year-old faces. So how are they going to process, as an adult, these grown folk emotions? Once again, that's where I step in with the hope. Yeah. Because it's important.
Yeah, well, I think it's massively important. It's why I was excited to have you come on as well, just to show our dedicated viewership of like, there are so many routes to get the right support. There are so, because, you know, I mean, we get a lot of the information in the field of like resources, or there's not enough, you know, finances. It's like, if you get out there, there are people that are ready to support you in so many ways, right? Therapy's great. Going and seeing a doctor's great. Working with a coach, right? It's like, get with someone who, I would say the acid test is always get with someone who they have what you want.
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I could see a lot of people relating to what you're sharing and listening to this and finding hope in what you're saying.
Yeah, that's the goal. That's the goal. You know, I have a unique experience and background. A lot of times when I go into the schools or I go into, you know, the nonprofit where the youth are, I immediately have their attention. You know, I'm the guy that you bring in when you want to get their attention. Yeah. So that works in my favor. And then when I begin to open my mouth and just share the story, it has them engaged and they're locked in. You know, so I know that it's beneficial. I'm seeing the results behind it, so it's a blessing for me.
Yeah. So you do some work with nonprofits in the area as well, and it's not just your organization, but you volunteer time and work in these other organizations. What are some of those places where you found that you're spending a lot of time and bringing your message to? What are the ones that we kind of highlighted a few of them, but I want to maybe hear a little bit about those.
Clear Fork is one of them. Clear Fork is a youth rehab, right? So very fancy place, but the young boys that are at this place, they're not there by choice, right? They're there because their parents have put them there. And this place is an expensive place. So it really, I don't want to say opened my eyes because I already knew it, but it just made me even more adamant about what I was doing and the need for it. Because you have these young boys who are already on drugs, hard drugs. Right. So for me to be able to go in and there, my role is really a minister. So I get to incorporate a little bit of the motivational speaking, but I get to incorporate the faith because when I go to schools, I can't do that. Right. So now I get to hit them on that more faith-based level, but still practical and still easily digestible. Right. So just spending that time with them and being able to mentor them after that continuously and build relationships with them is beneficial for both, right? I'm being rewarded just as much as they are.
Sure. Do they do 12-step stuff at like Clear Fork and all that?
They do.
Yeah.
They do.
Yeah. It's, man, when you were touching on it just a moment ago of like these 13, 14-year-olds, this is the juncture where it's like these are grown decisions that you're making. All right. And having a guy like you, I imagine it's just like I think about the group I ran around with when I was that age. It's like if we had someone come in and say, hey, here's the product of what you guys think is fun. All right. It would have been extremely helpful for a lot of dudes who, you know, I loved, but they got swept away, man. They got swept away.
And then you know what else? Along with that, the need for mentorship, right?
Yeah.
Because it's one thing to come in and say, hey, look, this is what I did. Don't do it. All right, cool. You got my attention. But if you're going to tell me what not to do, what am I going to do? So being able to come alongside and do life with them and help them navigate emotions, help them navigate decisions, you know, is of the utmost importance because that's what actually builds a young person up. If you take it back or, you know, just kind of reflect when you were growing up, every single young man is going to have a role model. He's going to fashion his life after somebody, whether he sees them or whether he doesn't. This could be somebody from his neighborhood, it could be somebody on TV, right? It could be a rapper, it could be anybody. But he's going to learn from him in a sense. So for us, right, it is of the utmost importance to be able to come alongside them and be that potential source. You like the way I look, you like the way I'm moving. All right, look, this is what I'm doing. You know, I'm not out there in the streets. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that. I'm on this, and that's valuable.
It is. It is.
Gold.
Yeah, especially like how impactful those years are. They're in that phase of development of like, this is what's right and this is what's wrong. So along comes a mentor and says, well, this is what I've found to be right and wrong. And a lot of those younger generations, it's like when you were saying, well, the model typically, you know, when we talk about it is like generational around substances or just even trauma. It's like how far it goes back that they would have to even look in their own family tree to find someone that would be a semblance of a good example. Right. And so I guess a question I have for you that would be beneficial maybe to the viewers is, what would you say to parents who have some young kids or maybe even teenagers who are struggling right now? What's kind of the message you think they might need to hear of hope?
They need to hear that even though you're not a perfect parent, just your love and your support through anything that they're going through is seen and is heard and is valued, whether they say it or not. Trust me, it's valued. But for the parents that might be struggling with that, at the end of the day, you're looking for an answer. You're looking for a solution. And there are, just as you said, there are a lot of solutions out there. There are a lot of people that can come in and do what you can't do. Because unfortunately, as a parent, your influence is limited, especially around that age group.
Yeah.
So being able to connect them to the right resources, the right people, the right environment, right, is going to be of the utmost importance, because the young person is going to choose who they receive from.
Yeah.
So you want to surround them around as many positive people as you possibly can.
Yeah. You know, my therapist was telling me this story the other day of, like, she lives next door to this young couple. They have a 5-year-old son, and he comes over to the window sometimes, like when she's doing sessions, like knocks on the window, like, open, right, to talk to her. And it's like, she was kind of sharing this from the standpoint of, like, they don't, you know, just in your life, they don't have to be your kids, right, to show them unconditional love. And it's a message we talk about a lot on this show that I'm glad to hear you echoing, is like the importance of unconditional love, right? Which is the root is love and discipline. It's where the principle of unconditional love came from. And I think a lot of people, they'll hear discipline, they think punishment, but discipline is learning a lesson, right? And so, you know, just your testament here today, it's like, we're here to teach lessons, right? And as a parent, with the things that are imperfect in the ways that just as human beings, we're going to enact these with kids, it's like, just trust that maybe if you guide them towards the right communities, they'll get those pieces they need as well.
Already, yes,
You know?
absolutely.
And I heard that from what you were sharing, and I just think it's such a powerful message.
And you said something, unconditional love. You talk about that a lot on the podcast?
We do,
You
yeah. It's. I think it's a thread a lot of times naturally of what people are looking for in therapy. To develop that therapeutic relationship, a lot of times is that unconditional love that they're looking for, if the therapist knows what they're doing.
All right, so even with the men?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
Okay, all right. And the reason that I'm asking is because that is such a powerful, it's not just a word, it's action, right?
Yeah.
It's extremely, extremely powerful. There's nothing stronger than it. But it seems as if we have taken that at times and thrown it away as if it's insignificant or it shouldn't even be in the arsenal, right? What is me loving somebody going to do? How is me loving going to help them break this addiction? How is me loving them going to stop being so angry, right?
Yeah.
But that unconditional love is absolutely imperative.
It's crucial. It's the only way I can really put it is, like, there's the aspect of me that understands it clinically in the way, like, psychologically it breaks down, and then there's the part that really matters, which is like, when you move closer to your understanding of God, it becomes abundantly clear that the way that people heal in life is that path. And, you know, someone wise shared with me a while ago in the beginning of my recovery and healing journey that the only prayer I really need to say in the morning is, God, show me how to be of maximum service to my fellows today. And if my home is in order, he'll show me where to do that. You know?
At maximum service.
Yeah, service. And that's unconditional love. And I talk a lot with, especially my male clients, is like, service is not help, right? So if I agree to do something for somebody, but I don't have the time, right, to do that, but I go and then I miss a deadline, that's me helping that person, and that might not be the best, right? But service is, I have the free time, they need the help, I can go and swing this, right? That's unconditional, right? It's like, I'm showing love for that person by offering that service, and I'm not going out of my way to let all my priorities slip, right? Which on the flip side means that if I needed to say no, right, that I could just let that person know.
Right.
It's the beauty of boundaries too, right? Because
Absolutely.
like, if I say no to that person, they get pissed off, then I get to make a decision as to whether or not I want to continue to engage with that person.
You better believe it.
Right? Which those are like when you start to lay it out for men like that, it's like, unconditional love is not weakness. That's your strength.
Absolutely.
Right? There's so many branches from there that will protect you and the people you love in life.
And I love that you lay it out so clearly, right, in that manner, because just because I love you unconditionally doesn't mean that I'm going to let other areas of my life be neglected, because then I would not be loving these other areas.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, it's like this point you're making, it's like the most loving thing you can do for a person is just tell them the truth.
Ooh.
And don't, you know, we talked about this on the show last week because we talked about radical honesty. Is like, it's not, because you'll hear a lot of times like, well, I just tell it how it is. It's like, well, sometimes when you just tell it how it is, you can be really rude, and then no one cares if you're being honest. But if you can look at someone and say, you know, when this was said, I felt this way, and you're just honest about it, that's the most loving thing, because they may not know that it affected you that way.
You know how hard that is for me?
Oh, man.
Do you know like how many sessions, how many times
go into it.
we had to talk about navigating our emotions as men? We're lousy at it.
Yeah.
Absolutely terrible. Because just to say that sentence sometimes can make a man feel small. I felt like this when you did that.
Yeah.
Especially in prison. Could you imagine? Oh, man, there's not many trying to say that. You soft? You kidding me?
Yeah.
You want me to tell my girl what?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's so, once again, imperative. But then it's also groundbreaking, because the alternative is to keep it bottled up, not say anything about my emotions, act as if I'm okay, and then end up expressing my emotion that I did not adequately express in a even more negative way. So now, because I felt hurt behind what you said, and since I don't know how to express that, let me just lash out in anger.
Right.
So I replace one emotion for another one that I think is strong, that I think is manly. Right. And that's foolish.
Yeah. You know, it's in for men, especially in our society, but I think just anywhere really in the world, for whatever reason, anger is this like accepted kind of surface emotion, right? But what you were saying is the bedrock truth. It's like underneath that anger is hurt, right? But good luck getting another man to admit to a dude, I'm hurt by what you did. Yeah. Because it only works in these settings. You know, like once we've come to a place of understanding that we're moving our lives closer towards a place of purpose and meaning, then as men, we can come to a place of like, we're building community. That's what we're doing here. You know, and if we're not, it comes back to what you were saying in the beginning. What are you doing? You know, that's where the fruit of life is. Are you building a community? Are you building trust with people or not? Because if you're not, life is a whole lot harder.
Absolutely.
It's a lot harder.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. 100%.
You know, it's like, that's a lesson I watch. I had to learn it. I watch almost every man I work with is teaching them how to stop isolating themselves, because they want so much out of their lives. And if they would just put a little bit of effort, I mean, you know, someone said this, and then I'll shut up and I want to hear from you on this, is if you give God a little bit, he'll give you a lot. If you give him a little bit more, he's going to give you a lot more. You're never going to outgive God.
Absolutely.
And I don't want to make any bones about this one on the show tonight. It's why I was excited to talk to you. Is like, there's my clinical brain, and then there's the faith that I hold that has allowed me to just be a fruitful clinician in my community, and it's God. And it has been the whole time.
Absolutely.
Anytime I moved away from him, I was fucking up. Anytime I moved closer, I could see his hand. And now I just trust that, you know, as best I can.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. So with that, I'm just trying to unpack the statement, or I don't even want to say the statement, but the lifestyle and what you have. You have a clinical mindset, but then you have the faith mindset, right? And being able to marry those two together. And I believe that it's like that in every aspect, whether it's, you know, therapy, whether you are a doctor, medical doctor, no matter what your field is, no matter what you're doing, you're going to have to be ambidextrous to a degree. Not everybody has the same faith. Not everybody believes in God. But for those that do, being able to allow him to be the center of everything and let everything else kind of revolve around and mix in that is absolutely important. Because I would imagine, you know, as you're using your clinical expertise, there are times where something might pop up and you're just like, you know what, I'm not even going to mention that right now. I'm not even going to go down that road. I'm not even going to go down that vein. And you take another route.
Yeah.
That's God. Leading and guiding.
Yeah.
Because he wants to make you fruitful. And that's what you've experienced, and that's what you've seen, and that's the goal.
It is. It is. in ways that we could document it, that insurance companies will pay for it, in ways that we can't. Right? It's like whatever the truth is, as far as like everything moving towards healing. It doesn't matter how you relay it. It just matters that you have some kind of connection in a way that you understand it. And and I've said it a few times tonight, but that's why I was excited, because I could tell that you and I have very similar views in these ways, and we've had plenty of people on the show and good friends of the show. They have different views, and we come from that same perspective you were just highlighting. Is like, when you move your life through that, all right, whatever it is that you believe about it, life will be better. And what I found with some of the most knuckleheaded ass dudes on the face of the earth is, if they just move a little bit closer towards like like prayer and meditation, right? Even if they don't believe in the stuff, their life gets better. They're very simple things. They're just hard. They're difficult. And it really kind of boils down to like, we'll use the tagline here tonight of like, what are you going to do? All right. If you want something you've never had, you got to be willing to do something you've never done. Absolutely. I don't care if you believe in it or not. Just give it a shot. That's why like AA is so effective for hard-headed dudes.
And that makes people have to unhand things. Yeah. Because there's a certain level of uncertainty and unknowing whenever you step out in faith. Because especially we as men, we are very instructional, I guess, if you will. What's the plan? What's the plot? Like, show me the numbers, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And now you want me to meditate and pray. Yeah. Am I hoping now? Am I wishing? Like, so for a lot, that is asking a lot, but what are you going to do?
Yeah. Well, that's why I like that you highlight it so simply, because it's much more approachable, I think, to come in with that message. It's like, okay, once they can embrace like your message of like, what are you going to do? Then we can start to plant those seeds, right?
I'm sorry.
Go for it.
So you mentioned healing, right? Healing takes time, and it is a journey, as you well know. But how can you heal if you never identify the problem? Yeah. How can you heal if you never address what's really going on? And those are some of the topics that we dive into as well. Yeah. I could speak about those things, but those are really in the trenches, and it takes some time, and it takes some unearthing, and it takes some uncomfortability. Yeah. And really addressing like, oh, it was the divorce. Oh, it was the fact that my mother abandoned me. Oh, it was the fact that my father abused me, right? And those traumatic experiences, they know how to hide. Yeah. They know how to hide very well.
It's the one thing they're good at, is hiding in the psyche.
Yeah. They know how to hide very well. And what a lot of people end up doing is trying to fight the symptom and never getting to the problem.
Yeah, I like that explanation too, because when I would work in treatment and we'd have group therapy sessions, I'd always say, imagine it like a tree, right? The branches are like, you're smoking like a chimney. You're trying to sleep with every girl here in treatment. You're using drugs when you're not here. You would rather go and watch a movie than go to a meeting, right? These are the symptoms, and you're climbing up the tree and you're breaking off a branch. But by the time you climb over to the other branch, that old one grew back, right? Instead, we need to go down to the roots. Yes. And there's kind of four major ones, and we could have a lot of debate and discussion, but it's like you got shame, trauma, right? All types of like shame, trauma, abuse, like all the different forms of abuse, and neglect, right? So some would put like abandonment and neglect together, but it's like when you get down to those roots and you stop hiding from it. I had a client tell me today, he said, I've been working with him for some time, and about a year ago, I had mentioned to go into the rooms, and he said, you had planted this seed, and I kind of would come back around, I'd kick dirt on it, and then I'd leave. So he would leave sessions, like just ghost me, and then come back like months later. And he's like, and then one day I decided to water it, and I realized like, oh, this is what he was talking about. Yeah. And it's just, men are very much that way.
Absolutely.
They've got to test it all out.
Absolutely.
I talk with all my friends and my significant other, like, men will come into therapy. I'll confront them with loving truth. They'll run away. Then they come back. They'll run away. But when they finally come and get seated, they're the best clients you'll ever have.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're ready to work. Like you were saying earlier, forced to be reckoned with. You make a recommendation, they do it. They may do it in their own way.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I love about working with men too, is like, you just never know what way they're going to do it.
And then see, so you get the absolute pleasure of seeing that journey and seeing the flower blossom, if you will. I know we're talking about men, but that's something that came to my mind. Seeing them, you know, develop and kind of break out of that shell and begin to handle their emotions differently. And, you know, we love women, right? But sometimes when a woman is trying to get to the root of a man's problem or her husband or boyfriend or her son, she has a tendency to take him too fast. But what you did is absolutely gold, because you plant the seed and you allow him that time to process it. Because what we're going to do as men, all right, whatever, that's nonsense. But then we're in the shower.
Mm-hmm.
Going to sleep at night. Man, what he's right.
Yeah.
And then we come back. Because we process things a little bit different.
Yeah.
Right? But for those that are giving that seed, somebody still has to water. And it's the fact that he watered it and came back, that's the journey. That's what it looks like a lot of times.
Yeah. You know, I've heard it, you know, it's like maybe a lot of people would say that it's like, oh, well, men are logical, which we are, right, in those realms more than emotional. But the interesting thing is like for millennia, men learn lessons with these, right? So, you know, when he was giving me that picture of like kicking the dirt on it, you know, it's like, imagine him standing there with his hands in his pocket, like spitting on it, you know, just kind of checking it out. He's like, oh, I'll come tomorrow.
Yeah.
Maybe brings a shovel the next day and digs it back out, looks at the seed, you know. It's like, that's how we operate,
Right.
you know. And I think our counterparts on the other side, they talk through things, right? And I think it's maybe sometimes why they learn lessons a little quicker.
Absolutely.
You know, because we kind of got to break things too to figure it out. I mean, I'm sure you and I are similar in that when we were younger. It's like I kind of got to break it to see how it works. Yeah, you know,
absolutely.
And I took it too far a lot of times.
Look, my future wife, God bless her heart, she's so patient with me. I had to learn a very valuable lesson this past week, but that's the lesson that I'll never forget. Whenever we break something, whenever we mess up, if you are dedicated to being a man and making things right, most importantly, learning, right? Learning from your mistake and growing, it puts you in a much better position later. Because now not only do I understand the mistake that I made, but I understand how it impacted her, and I understand, I guess, warning signs from myself so that I do not go back down that path. And that is being a healthy man. Yeah. Being a healthy man, being a stable man isn't about being perfect. That's nonsense, right? Yeah. Christian faith, right? But Christians are oftentimes the most messed up people in the world. But that's the story of the faith. We know we messed up. And if you meet a Christian that acting like they ain't messed up, go the other way.
Yeah. Get out of that situation.
We're messed up, right? So being able to assess and learn and adjust, right? I'm going to make an adjustment. I'm going to do things different. I'm going to process things different. That's what makes, one of the many things that makes a real man valuable.
Yeah, it's a slice of the pie that gets us a little bit closer. And that's kind of an analogy that's growing on this show, is like each person we bring in, it's like this is a slice of the pie that gets us as a community just a little bit closer. To what? Probably God, but other than that, in our physical reality, I don't know, just a better life. It's kind of like I have this friend, he said, you know, when he takes his dog to the beach, his dog goes number 2 on the beach, he finds a piece of trash on the beach to pick it up with. He said, it may stick, it may not, right? But if everybody did it, it'd be a cleaner beach. But would I rather not do that? You know, and those are the kind of decisions. It's like when I wake up, there's this prayer that was told to me a long time ago. God, help me make more mistakes, or God, help me make mistakes in preparation for making more mistakes. You know, it's like I'm going to mess up. And if I just embrace that with grace, then in relationships, we can embrace the fact that, like, when I love somebody, I'm going to make mistakes. But I can own it. I can own and clean up my side of the street. And if I do so, I'm probably going to attract in somebody who's willing to do that as well, right? Because that's that missing piece. I think a lot of young dudes, when they're out running and gunning, like, why do I keep meeting the wrong chick? Or the chicks are like, why do we keep meeting the wrong dudes? Because you're not taking care of you.
Absolutely.
You attract what you put out.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And that's a whole topic in and of itself.
Yeah.
Talking about relationships.
Well, we'll have to have you back on and we could sit down and chat about all that. Because I do think we could have a really good conversation about that, of like how, you know, for the community, like how do we help dudes find, you know, better ways to be in relationships and better relationships.
Absolutely. And look, all right, so I'm watching things, right, from behind the bars, and I am seeing the messaging. I'm seeing, you know, what's kind of going on, you know, out in society, and I'm wondering, where are the men? Like, where are they going? What are we being led to do or believe? Are our values still family? Are our values still raising up these kids? Or has it shifted to, you know, money, who's got the biggest this, that, or that? And then depending on where you're from, the measurement of man is totally different. If I go to the hood, a young man's going to want obviously, money, but he's going to be concerned with Dracos. He's going to be concerned with hoes. He's going to be concerned with all these things, right? If I go to the other part of town, people are going to be concerned with what? The size of the house, the size of the bank account, the investments they have, right? So all these different measurements, right? But none of those things add value, true value, to a man. Yeah. So it is, what is the messaging? What are you believing? What are you really trying to take in to add value to yourself? Because those things don't add value to you. Right. They just help you hide behind the insecurities.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, and I know you would have a sentiment on this. It's very similar. It's like wealth is great. All those things are great. But that's not going to bring you peace when you lay your head on your pillow at the end of the night. You're there on your own in those moments. Who you find in those moments, right? What you latch onto and grasp for in those moments, that's who you are as a man. You know, your morals and your values. And just listening to your videos and watching the work that you do, it's like community is a huge, huge piece of that value system. That society, we're losing touch with it a little bit. So I'm just glad to have someone on here again this week to talk a little bit more about those things, because it's like we're not here to give some kind of cure. That's not the premise or the objective here. It's just to show that you can still find hope, even though a lot of people are losing sight of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is absolutely the heart and the sentiment behind everything that I do, because I have the, unique, I guess, background and the desire to make an impact in the secular arena, and then obviously continue spreading the faith and being connected to the church, if you will, because church is community. But those same principles, the same love, the same wisdom, the same value system, I guess, if you will, is still needed in society, and that will make for a much safer place, and a much more stable place, right? At the end of the day, I would be a lousy preacher if I did not come back to this, right? For me, right? Being in that cell, all alone, the people that wanted to be there for me, they couldn't, even if they wanted to, right? They could not physically be there. There was nothing I could do. All of my powers, everything that I had attained was ripped. So in a place of nothingness, it was the very power, presence, and spirit of God that I felt. And it is that message of, even though you've messed up, even though you have done this and you've put yourself here, I still love you. And I still got something for you, right? And that's the gospel.
Yeah.
And that is what picked me up and put me on the path I'm on now.
Yeah. When we're talking earlier about like the unconditional love between people, parents, kids, that kind of stuff, it's like, well, that's what we're striving for, is what you were just touching on. But the only place we're ever going to get a pure form of that is whatever connection we find with our higher power. It's the one and only place. And it reminds me, there's this book, it's called The Gulag Archipelago. It's about like prison camps in Russia back during like World War II phase.
Ooh,
And there's, it's heavy stuff. I'll tell you, Jeremy, it's a book to read in your lifetime. If for anybody listening, it's a book to read in your lifetime. And the author, he had amassed all these letters from people who had been in these prison camps. And the premise is this. He says, he was sitting with his life completely stripped away from him, in a government that was never going to give it back. Oof. And the only question he could ask was, what's my part in it? That was it. People to this day all over the world, they credit this book to why the Iron Curtain fell in Russia, because of the spiritual nature of this book, as I'm eating the microphone. But the spiritual nature of this book was very much in the darkest places. Your path to hope is, what's my part in this? Right? If you can look at it, because there's these premises in the book of like where they're telling on their neighbors, and it's like, if each one of those neighbors would have just asked that question, all right, this is how we hold a society together. It's not about not snitching on people. It's about holding up to your truth, right? Not getting swept away by what somebody tells you is right. But, it's like, I guess the dark side of it is like, are you willing to die for your truth or not? There's a question for the age, right?
Absolutely. Wow. That does sound like a good book. But touching on what you just mentioned, are you willing to die for what you believe? And going back to that time where I was completely unstable, my truth is what got me in that situation, right? So for me, I had to rely on God's truth and that word, and Him telling me and showing me who I was and believing it. It's the catalyst of who I am now, right?
I have a hard question for you, maybe.
Come on with it.
That guy back then, the Jeremy back then, whose truth that was, that part died off back then, didn't it?
Yes, but he's still around.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
No, I hear you.
His ghost, he be haunting me every day. But that's a part of the experience of life, right? There are a lot of things that I don't even desire. I don't desire to do a drug, right? I don't desire whatsoever. I've never had a craving, but I was addicted to crack cocaine for 3 years, right? And I'm talking about all the way. Everybody in my life had to take a step back from me because I was that toxic. I was terrible, absolutely terrible. God took that addiction away from me. Thank you, right? But pride, yep, still struggle. Lust, yep, still struggle. Insecurity, yep, still struggle. Anger, yeah, still. So there is a major part of him who has died, but that struggle will always be there. But I'm grateful for it because it is the struggles that truly reveal the character of the man. Because it's easy for me to talk about being successful, being dedicated, being faithful when everything's going my way. But as soon as adversity strikes and I don't know what to do, now all that stuff that you was talking about, now what are you going to do? But that is what chisels you and makes you even more stronger and even more fruitful in the next area in your life because you go through the storm, because you keep pushing. You mess up, all right, cool. Acknowledge it, get back up. What did you do wrong? Are you going to learn? Are you going to grow? All right, let's go.
Yeah. And that's the message, I think, to take away from a lot of what we're talking about. Like just for the men listening too, or like if ladies who are watching, for those conversations you're having with men, is like, we need those mistakes. We talk about this a lot, like when I would do like men's group therapy, is like, if you want to be tenable at something, go be terrible at it. Right? Be terrible and be willing to be terrible so that you can become tenable. It's like when I first sat down in a therapy session with someone, I had terrified. I was like, why would this person want to sit and talk to me? I had no clue. I was like, what do I do with my hands? Should I sit on them?
Ricky Bobby?
Yeah, yeah, like just raising. Yeah, but it worked out. Here we are 12 years later and facing the mistakes, right? Getting it ripped apart by other clinicians who are giving you feedback, right? It's like you just go through the reps,
Can I ask you something on that?
Yeah.
How did you take that? Because that was, well, let me back up a little bit. All right, so when you were getting the feedback, did you feel that it was constructive feedback, or did you feel like it was an attack?
Both. Worst moments of my life, some of the best moments of my life. It's like it made me willing to actually, I think because I was 21 when I first started. I was a young man, fresh off a baseball field. A few years after, kind of like, I made a lot of my mistakes in high school, got arrested towards the end of high school multiple times, turned my life around with baseball. When I was becoming a clinician at 21 and someone wanted to give me feedback, I was like a bull in a china shop. You didn't know what you were going to get from me. And I had a lot of people willing to be patient with me, So it's like some of those moments are the worst, because I was like, man, is this personal? But the reality, right, this is maybe the key answer, is like those were the first moments outside of a baseball field where I had a chance to realize this is just professional. It's not personal, right? So if they're like, why would you say something like, because we used to have to record our sessions. So you're watching yourself like, man, do I weigh that much? So there's all that going on, and they're giving me feedback. But it's like you said, it chisels you. It's like, I needed that feedback. Whether I agree with it or not, it's like, well, I can take it in. And the more you do it, the easier it gets to hear. And then you start to realize which pieces are true, what fits. And that's another aspect of growth and healing, is take what you like and leave the rest. All right. You can come back to it later, so painful. Yeah, it was painful.
So there was this very successful businessman that I was incarcerated with, but we shared the same faith and we got to know each other really well. And he was a mentor of mine. So one day we were talking about essentially humility and being able to take constructive criticism and feedback from people. And he told me something, and I always try to apply it, and it's still hard at times. But no matter what, right, is what he told me. Even if it's constructive feedback, or even if that person is malicious with it, if you can be humble enough and just lean in to what they're saying and take the grain that might be in there, you'll still be more valuable. So it's always in your best interest to be all ears and say, tell me more.
Yeah.
Very hard, though.
Absolutely. Yeah. Take the cotton out of the ears and put them in the mouth.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I have one last question for you here. This I ask all of our new guests, but if we were to build a mental health amusement park and you were allowed to build a ride, what would be the first ride that you built and why?
Golly, that's a great question. It's an amazing question. I don't know what I would call it, but it would be some type of fast ride that goes up and down. But not just like straight up, like up and big arches, like a roller coaster, but no curves, just up and down, just up and down. And the purpose or the reason behind it is because that's what my experience was like, navigating mental health and stability. But I guess after the ride, I'd hand them a brochure. It'd be like, now this is how you maintain a more constant level. Because it's a ride, and it's definitely a journey, but it's one well worth taking.
I'm going to press you on this one just real quick. If you had to slap a name on it, what would you call it?
If I had to slap a name on it, the up and down sensation. It's a long name, but that's what it would be.
All right. Well, Jeremy, I really appreciate you coming on. I think you shared a lot of value.
I appreciate you having me. This has been a absolutely wonderful time. Thank you.
Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, Jeremy Govan. We break the cycle here every Friday night, 7 p.m. We love you. We'll see you next week.